Welcome, everybody, to March 16th Commissioners Special Meeting. Thank you all for being here in person and online today. We really appreciate that. Today, we're going to be discussing the strategic planning. It's a showcase to all of staff and some not staff who are interested. And at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn the presentation over to Thomas O'Connor. Oh, I should introduce myself. I'm sorry, and give opportunity for my seatmates. I am Commissioner Georgia Miller, representing District Number 1.
I'm Rick Hall, District Number 2.
Vicki Rains, District 3.
Thank you. Thanks for that look reminding me. I got it. Thanks.
Hang on a sec.
Thomas, can you give us a sound check, please?
How's that? Does that work?
Yep.
You hear me out there? Okay. I gotta find my PowerPoint slide deck. It just disappeared. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I missed it completely. Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. For those that don't know me, my name is Thomas O'Connor. I've been working with the Board of Commissioners for a year now on their strategic plan. Just a note, I take responsibility for the process. They were the owners of the content. And so I want to first of all walk through a little bit about what a strategic plan is, and we'll eventually get to the core details and then ask for your feedback. So the first thing we want to address is, why do we want a strategic plan? We're going to introduce the county's mission, vision, value statements, and then how we're going to ask for your feedback. And so let's start with the beginning, which is, why a strategic plan? Turn this around.
No.
Okay, why a strategic plan? And if anybody can't hear me for some reason, let me know. I have hearing aids, and the result of that is I tend to hear myself shouting when in fact I'm speaking really low volume. So please let me know. So why a strategic plan? The whole purpose of a strategic plan is to help the organization align on both the objectives, the what we want to do, and the strategies, the how we want to do it. And we can show this in a chart. We do a 4-quadrant chart. If we start in the lower left quadrant on this chart, this is all conceptual. On the lower left quadrant on this chart, what we see is that if everyone is using different objectives and different strategies, what we tend to have is a case of chaos, where we're not getting much done and we're certainly not doing it effectively. So one of those things we try to do is we say, okay, we're going to agree on the strategies, but have little agreement on what the objectives are. And this is where we get into the, why are we doing this? Because we've always done it that way. We tend to become very bureaucratic. We do it this way because we've always done it. Do we know why we're doing it? No. And then the next, our next quadrant here is where we all agree on what the objectives are, but our strategies are all different. And so we tend to work at crossroads to each other. We tend to be ineffective and inefficient. And where we want to get to is this diagram where we've optimized. We all know what it is we're trying to achieve, and we're doing it in the same way. So the goal with a strategic plan is to align on the goals and the objectives to optimize how we function as an organization. So there are some elements, some key elements of a strategic plan. And I'm going to start off by telling you that I was a science geek when I was a kid. I was a 10-year-old kid when Neil Armstrong first stepped on the moon. And I use this as an example because when John F. Kennedy announced the intent to send a man to the moon back in 1962, he created a mission for the Apollo program. And that mission was to send a man to the moon and bring him home safely by the end of the decade. It's a very straightforward mission, but it describes why did the Apollo program exist? Why did the program exist? When we talk about a mission statement, when I put the mission statement up here, I'll come back to that. Why does the organization exist? And then we have the second part of a strategic plan is a vision statement. And I use this example. This was Neil Armstrong took this picture of Buzz Aldrin as he was stepping onto the moon. And there's a story related to this, to how NASA actually had pulled this off. Because when John Kennedy announced the intent to send a man to the moon and bring him back by the end of the decade, all the engineers at NASA said it can't be done. There's no way. And then somebody at NASA said, well, what if we change the question slightly and you assume that you have somebody standing on the moon? What do they need? And then answers started showing up. Here's what we need. And they said, okay, how did he get there? And then, well, answers started showing up, and those things that were incredible obstacles started to be things that people found ways around. So it's important to have that vision. What does the county look like? So this is a 3 to 5 year plan. So what's the county going to look like 3 years from now? And speaking from that future tense state. So when you look around, this is what you see. And then does anybody recognize this photo? They know what it is? This was the Space Shuttle Atlantis 72 seconds into its flight, or the termination of its flight anyway. In this case, NASA chose to violate one of their values. The value was mission safety. Except in this case, they had Christy McAuliffe on board. And they had school children across the country watching this launch. And even though the engineering company that designed and built the solid booster rockets recommended against launch temperature was 28 degrees that day. They recommended against launch. The managers at NASA didn't understand the concern and chose to launch anyway. In doing so, they violated a value. And I point this out because the reason that you have value statements is in pursuit of your mission and in pursuit of that vision, you got to set some boundary conditions. So I'll give a more concrete example. If you are a employer, for example, who says we value work, work-life balance. If you value work-life balance, then you get behind on a project and you say mandatory 12-hour days. You've just violated that value of we value work-life balance. And that may be okay for a while, but there are limits to what you can do when you mandate mandatory 12-hour days. So we have values. Those values are those limits that say we're not going to violate these in the pursuit of our vision and our mission. And so then you have to get there, right? We talked about the mission, the vision, the values. We have to get to that vision. And so we set some goals or some objectives. And I use the term values, correction. I use the term goals and objectives synonymously here. There is a difference. I'm not going to go into that. If I say goal, I also mean objective here. So we set some high level objectives, things that we think we're going to do, things that we want to do. And then those are only of value if you can measure the results, right? How do you know that you've achieved that objective? And so we talk about key results. What are the key things that we're going to achieve that demonstrate that we're approaching or have achieved our objective? And then there are strategies. And this is where you all come in. There are strategies. The strategies are the specific things that we want to do to achieve that key result. Any questions so far? Okay. I got a few blank faces, so I'm asking. And then finally, there are tactics, and that the difference between tactics and strategy is often hard to understand. I relate tactics are tasks in a project that guide step by step how we get there. The strategy is a broader term. Tactics are these specific things at these specific times done by these specific people. Today, we're going to talk about strategies. We're going to leave tactics for a future time. So what's the plan? So this was presented back in November, I think, was adopted. It's the mission statement to effectively provide foundational services to enhance the quality of life, encourage economic growth, and unify our community as one Grays Harbor. I'm going to do a quick aside here, because when I looked at that mission statement, something stood out to me, which is foundational services. So what are foundational services? And I have a big chart over here on the wall that those online probably can't see, but I'm going to step through bits of this. This is all conceptual. I started looking and say, well, what are those government services we provide? And there are two basic kinds of government services. There's what I refer to as front of house services. That's the thing that our constituents care about. And then there are back of house services, which are those things that we have to do in order to achieve those things that are important to our constituents. So for example, on the government services or on the things, on the front of house things, the things that our constituents care about, there's public safety, there's land use planning, there's infrastructure, there's public health. And if you break that out further, we break it out into a bunch more specific things, and you start looking at what the county does. The county does a lot of things. I'm not going to go into all the great details of those. And if you look on the other side of it, the back of house things, the things that are absolutely necessary, but our constituents don't really care about, those are things that, like, we need employees to deliver those services. Those employees need to get paid. To get paid, they need a revenue source. For a revenue source, we have taxes. In order to do taxes, we do property valuations. So those are back of house services. Again, we do a lot of things. And then what the commissioners have done is said, around all of those services, we have some key objectives. And those key objectives, I'm not going to go into yet. We'll get to those. Those key objectives all lead to a set of key results. And of those key results, we recognize we can't do everything at once. So I've color coded some of them at the ones in green, which are actually, this is actually out of date. This is a living document. Those are actually out of date. But the point is we can't do everything at once. So we're going to try to narrow it and say, what are the things we can actually do over the term of this strategic plan? So if we go back to the main topic, I just talked about the mission statement. The vision statement, Grays Harbor County will be the foundation of a thriving community focused on housing, health and safety, criminal justice, economic development, and financial stewardship. And we're going to see how each of those sub-items in that vision statement lead to a set of objectives. And then our value statement focuses on transparency, stewardship, leadership, integrity, and service orientation. The next thing I want to talk about is this tool. Again, I brought the process, the commissioners brought the content. So I want to talk a little about this thing that I call the strategy alignment matrix, why I use it, why I think it's useful and important, how it will eventually feed into that strategy document that everyone oohs and ahs over and then puts in a binder and sticks on their shelf and it collects dust. Because what really needs to happen is the strategy alignment matrix becomes a living document that gets updated and revised at least on a quarterly basis. We look to see where we're at, what we've accomplished, what's next. So let's talk about that. So we start off at the top of the strategy alignment matrix with our mission, vision, value statement. I'm going to get into why that's important in just a second. And below that, we start off with the elements of the value statement, or what we call the pillar of the vision statement. What did I just say? I just said the wrong word. The elements of the vision statement. And we put those on the left-hand side of the matrix, and we look at objectives based on those pillars of the vision statement. We have some objectives. And then again, how do you know that you're achieving those objectives? We establish some key results. And then on the right-hand side of that matrix are all of the strategies that can be used to achieve those key results. And then, okay, so why the matrix? Because when you look at it, it's really busy. It's got lots of stuff on it. The first thing is you got your mission up there, you got your vision up there. Now you can say, do our objectives align with our mission and our vision statements? And then you can look at them and say, do we have quantifier? Oh yeah, yeah. Do we have measurable elements here? Are they actionable? There's an acronym called SMART. Are they SMART objectives? And then you start looking at your strategies and say, what are the strategies that we can use to get there? And part of the goal today is to start asking for your input. What are the strategies that we as a staff can use to get to that key result, which gets us to the objective, which moves us towards the vision? And then finally, when we look at our strategies, are there any of our strategies that are misaligned with our values? Are we trying to do something that doesn't make sense, that would violate firmly held values? And so the reason for the matrix is, as we start talking about strategies, as we start prioritizing and moving things around, we have a tool that lets us ask useful questions about all of these. So let's talk about our top level objectives. And I try to not read from slides, but I'm going to read from slides here. So I apologize for that. So if we look at financial stewardship, one of our objectives is that we are trusted to serve our community with unwavering integrity, guided by the highest ethical standards, stewarding public resources with frugality. And a couple of key results associated with that are to absorb the growth, or what we want to do at this first item, what we want to do is to grow the economy as much as possible so that that growth provides additional revenue so that we can what am I trying to say? so that we can absorb so we can absorb inflation without increasing taxes. So the idea is grow the local economy, provides more revenue, absorbs the cost of inflation. Establish a reserve fund balance, a minimum of 20% with a 25% future goal. The second objective is we are a continuous improvement organization, constantly striving to improve operational efficiency while maintaining customer service standards, regulatory compliance, and employee morale. And so the first thing on that list is to implement a financial software system. And the focus right now is on a payroll system to address our biggest pain point. And that's a work in progress. Consolidate and eliminate silos to increase efficiency. This is all about standardization and consolidation where applicable. And then the third goal here is through kindness and empowerment, we build trust, foster inclusion, inspire leadership at every level of the organization, committed always to excellence and the well-being of our colleagues. And we have two measurable results here. We would like to see at least 3 improvement projects implemented throughout the county. And the idea here is to encourage individual departments to do this, not to be a top-down activity. It's you see something, say something, let's do a plan for improvement. And the last one is, we haven't done this yet, but we would like to do a customer satisfaction survey so that we can judge how satisfied are our customers with the services that we provide that they value. The next one is housing. We want to be able to provide efficient and effective services which encourage safe, sustainable housing development at all levels. And right now we have one measurable result there is to reduce the amount of time for site planning review, increase the amount of people who are successfully getting through that process. Under health and safety, our goal is to facilitate the development of health and mental health services for our constituents. The first item there is there's a Chippenshaw report that was published last fall, if I remember correctly. And we want to implement the recommendations of that. We want to decrease the opioid death by 5% points over 5 years. It's a tall order, but that's a goal. Countywide suicide rate drops to at least 5% below the state overall within 3 years. And then increase mental health services by 10% over 5 years. Under criminal justice, facilitate the development of health and mental health services for constituents. This goes back to, there's some overlap here with the health department. Decrease behavioral health load on law enforcement over the next 3 years. Conduct or be the conduit to develop support programs to fill known gaps. For a healthier community is demonstrated by fewer people entering the intervention services. And the final one is build a new jail. And we're working on that now. And then lastly, we have, by the way, these were in the order that they are in the vision statement. They're not necessarily in the order that the commissioners deemed them important. And I point this out because economic development was number 1 on their list. So create and influence business-friendly policies and practices which encourage businesses to grow while preserving community safety and health. And the first one is we want to see the county GDP grow year over year. And then increased tourism throughout the county is indicated by increase of 5% points annually. So I just went through really fast all of the objectives and the key results that our commissioners have worked through, occasionally butted heads on, but agreed on over the last year, actually. So where do we go from here? We have way too many things. Will it distract me? Probably not. We have way too many things to be done right now. We don't have the resources. We don't have the capacity. We probably don't have the resources. We probably don't have the capacity. So we need to prioritize. In order to prioritize, we have to have a pretty good idea of what it is that can be done, who can do it, what kind of resources are necessary. And there are some things up here. If, for example, we have an objective and there's no strategies and we can't get any strategies in there, it's probably not a reasonable objective. So what we want to do is to get your feedback. And to do that, I'm going to do a couple of things. I will have this chart up here in this room available from 8 to 9 every morning. I'm going to have a box of sticky notes and markers and encourage you to put ideas and suggestions on it. I'm also going to have a virtual version of this that I will send out in an email later today with a link to the virtual version of that. And associated with that, I'm going to have a data entry form so that you can add suggestions, questions. And you can, on that data entry form, you can do it anonymously. You can put a name. I encourage the name because the name encourages a conversation. But if you want to do it anonymously, that's fine. But I do have some rules. I refer to this term kind questions, kind comments. So kind questions, first of all, they assume a good intention, right? You may not like the objective, but you assume that the objective was intended with good intent. The second thing is no personal attacks. You may think this guy, Thomas O'Connor, is a jerk, and maybe it's true, but that doesn't encourage conversation. It doesn't encourage positive feedback. So no personal attacks. And then the other key thing, and this is important, whether it's a question or whether it's a comment, is you propose a solution, right? Just saying we'll never get there, this is never going to get us anywhere, doesn't help us get anywhere. But if you say, we're never going to get there with this, but hey, here's this other idea. That's a really good idea. That's really good feedback. That's what we need that's what we need in order to figure out which of these items can actually be done, which we should put down for a future date. And oh, by the way, if there's something glaring missing here, we want to hear that too. So with that, now it's question and answer time. I'm going to turn it back over to the commissioners. Say thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'm going to give a little bit of my point of view on this and then give each commissioner an opportunity to weigh in. And then we'll take some questions from you all and try and answer them the best that we can. When I got into office, I found it odd that our county had never had a strategic plan, because how can you meet goals and objectives if you don't have any written goals and objectives? And then the commissioners can come up with goals and objectives based on what we think the community needs. But realistically, without the staff's input in helping us achieve those goals and objectives, they're really nothing. And so I am really proud of the work that we've done working together. And outside of what you see here, a lot of other things were decisions were come to and objectives eliminated because they weren't a good fit or they were important for the community, but not realistic for something that we could do. It was nice to come up with a plan of the overall goals and objectives. And one of the things I keep talking to the other departments about is I would encourage them to also create their own 3 to 5 year strategic plan within their own departments that work towards the objective. So when you're looking at your departments and how you can make them better, we welcome suggestions for that, but do they fit in the overarching strategic plan? Do they align with the vision, the mission, the values? And so if they do, then we want those ideas. We want to be better. We want to be more standardized, more streamlined. That will help us cut costs to save money. I know everybody wants to be paid more. Well, we have to be more efficient to do that. And so I think that this is a good starting place. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn to my right, District 2.
Oh,
If you'd
thank
like
you.
to add anything.
Well, I just wanted to concur with your thoughts. I think that the group that sat down day after day, month after month to hammer these items out are to be congratulated. So thank you, commissioners. Sam, Thomas, and Wendy were in those meetings with us. And I don't think we can say that we saw everything eye to eye when we came together. But for me, it was really important that we agreed on these priorities. And as a new commissioner, you come into the position and there's a million things going on. There really is. We're all on different committees that we're sitting on. Each of those committees has a key thing that they're working on that's really important to them. And for me, to be able to get in alignment with the other commissioners on what we feel are our key priorities just really helped me. Because when I go to talk to people, I know what our priorities are. And I know that when I speak about those priorities, I'm assured that the other commissioners support that. I'm not out I'm not out there all by myself on these issues. And so I really appreciate that. And I appreciate the work that was done to get this plan together. I think that the plan really becomes exciting, though, when we get to that one line that Thomas had, where we implement 3 staff recommended improvement projects. To me, if we can align on our focus, and then as commissioners support the work that the staff sees important, I think that's really where we start getting some doubles, triples, and home runs off of a process like this, so that it's not just directed top down. So I'm really excited about that. I know an example of that when we got the group together and talk about the payroll process in this room. I think that was pretty exciting. I would see that maybe we would have cross-functional teams talking about more of the issues that we have to deal with. For me, the housing is so important. The economic development is also so important. And so I talk about the need for the pellet mill, the need for the golf course out at Westport, the need for housing in McCleary. All the things that we're doing to help grow our economy and our county are so vitally important for being able to support the other work that we do. So I'm just really excited about this plan, and I will stop there. I'm not going to bore you with a bunch of that, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Commissioner Rains, District 3.
Thank you. Taking a page from Commissioner Hole, I understand that he's fairly new. Both commissioners have been about 14 and a half months in. I ran on planning. It's where my career comes from. And in 2014, and we brought this to the commissioners in 2015. I showed it to the county administrator when he came on board. So I'm very excited to have something that's down on paper. The values have yet to, and a lot of the detail has yet to be approved by the full board. So I hope that they will continue to work on this. I have about 2 weeks left, so I don't expect anything to come to fruition in that time frame. But I do have a couple comments that I wanted to make. I really hope that this document also goes out to staff, maybe not with your notes, Thomas, but maybe a couple slides each page, to have them have in front of them what we've talked about today, along with the electronic versions of those 2 documents. Because without the staff's feedback, it's just paper. It really is just paper. One of the comments that I looked at in here that we talk about is Under financial stewardship, through kindness and empowerment, we build trust, foster inclusion, and inspire leadership at every level of the organization, committed to always excellence and the well-being of colleagues. I'm probably going to take a little more time than what Commissioner Holt did. Commissioner Miller, Chair Miller, just so that you're aware. The bottom line is the bottom line on this document says customer satisfaction survey shows improvement from year to year. I think we need to define who the customer is. Because if you look at, I see Tim Trish back there, who I've known for 30 years, worked with him on COG back in the day. Who's his customer? It's not the public.
Mhm.
Who is IT's customer? It's not the public. It's all of us that are those customers. And so we need to make sure that we understand when we're doing a customer survey, customer satisfaction survey, who our customer is. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but I wanted to pick out a couple of things, and these will be no surprise to Thomas because I brought them up during our one-on-one meeting over this. But I think that we want feedback from each department, and I'll tell you why. We came up with the issues under health and safety. And I'll try not to get too close to this to cause that feedback. One of them is decrease the opioid deaths by 5 percentage points over 5 years. I don't know that as a county government that we can do that. I don't know that we can do that as a county government. To see the county suicide rate drop by at least 5% below overall state rate over 5 years, with parity in the state within 3 years. I don't know that we have any control over that, but I'd like to hear what the health department has to say. I'd like to hear what the Forensics Investigation Council of the state has to say, because they're going to be able to give us some information. We're not the only county dealing with these two issues. Increase mental health services by 10% over 5 years. I don't think there's anyone that isn't trying to do that right now. Another one, and I'm going to call this one out because we have the Fair and Tourism Director, Nikki Brown, in the audience with us today. County GDP, grows year over year. Again, I don't know what the county government can do to increase the GDP. And I don't believe we can do anything on our own, but I do think that we can work with people like the port, like the PUD, like with COG and Grace Harbor, Greater Grace Harbor, to get that point. Increased tourism throughout the county as indicated by LTAC, increase of 5 percentage points annually. Well, what is, again, I think it's a definition that's needed. What is tourism? Is it just people coming? Is it the revenue that the people bring in? I think that those are the type of, and I will say that our Board of County Commissioners, we came up with these ideas and some of them aren't fully vetted because we don't have your knowledge. We don't do your job. And I think the commissioners would agree with that. That's why I want everybody to get a copy of this and look at it to be able to give input. You have 2 weeks to do so. I think that it's very important. I think that we're moving forward. When I announced my resignation right around the corner, I had a call from Suresh going, well, we're going to make sure that your parks plan's done. And so I appreciate him taking the leap and getting that done. We have a capital facilities plan and those type of things. Please do not let this end up on a bookshelf somewhere. Put it to use and do everything that we can to make Grace Harbor a better place to live, work, and do business. We have amazing staff here. We have amazing people in our road division we have here today, building and planning, roads administration, tourism, and all the people online that there's some big things to fill. One of the things that I would throw back out before I close is we have criminal justice, but we really did not get any input from the courts. We really got no input from the courts to say what should be on this page. And so if they could take a look at this and the prosecutor's office take a look at this and get back to us. We had meetings last fall with all department heads and Sam, help me here. Separately elected officials. Thank you. Thank you. Separately elected officials. And some of them came but many of them didn't. So what you see before you is just what the three of us thought might be best. And we didn't agree with everything one-on-one. And you wouldn't want three commissioners that agree with everything on every single item. But please take the time to kind of take a look at this and give your input. And I'm hopeful that the commissioners and the incoming commissioner will listen to your voices and really put down something that they can put their teeth into and guide this county in a new direction. Thanks.
Thank you. That's exactly right. We need the staff's input. And that's why we're at this stage, is to ask for your input and to see what our overarching goals and objectives are. And then say, tell us your feedback on how we can get there. And then the nuance of how county can impact these things. If we have a streamlined permitting process, which our permitting process is very good. Ask anybody in Thurston County. They would rather get a permit here. But still, I do think that there's things that we can do there. And if we increase housing, a big cause of depression is people having instability in housing. And then people need jobs. And one thing leads to another, which builds the community. So when we talk about what we can and can't do, it's the nuances of what we can do that helps drive those other things. And so I really know that there is great minds all across the employees in this county, that they are problem solvers. They just need the opportunity to do that. And I believe that, my goal is to lead by empowerment, to give you guys that are doing the jobs the opportunity to say how those jobs should best be done, and then come back to us and let's try and figure out strategically how we can all make that happen. So where there's a will, there's a way. But anyway, so now I would expect there should be some questions from you all on some of this. At least if not now, over the next week to 2 weeks, as we flesh out what we can do to achieve those goals.
Do you have anything online?
In terms of questions?
Yes.
Comments, questions, chat?
Very quiet. With all 98 participants.
Well, we've stunned them. Yeah.
Hands raised.
Great. Thank you for that. Yes. Well, can you, since I can't see?
Dan Teutoburger up there.
Oh, I'm sorry. I see up there. Rose, since from my view, you're first, you want to go ahead with your question?
Hi.
Oh,
Thank you, Commissioner. My question is, you're asking for staff feedback on this entire plan. Are there any particular areas that you are interested in to start? I wonder how we ought to prioritize what we're looking at.
Well, I think the priority is probably going to be different depending on what department you are in. I don't know. Do you have something to answer that, commissioners?
I think we're going to get into the tactics next, but if you take a look at what we have on the board, maybe you come back with, like I mentioned, the tourism, maybe you come back and say, I don't think 5%'s good. I think it should be 8 or it should be 3, and why and how that would look. I think those type of recommendations, or if we miss something, that's key for me, is that if we miss something on the chart that should be a priority or should be a point that we drive home on, make sure you make us aware of it. No answer is a wrong answer.
And then hopefully a tactic on how how to achieve that goal. Did you have an added to that question, or should I take the next one?
Well, on that particular one, thinking about economic growth in the county, how does our website maybe lead visitors to understand what there is to do in the county? That's just an example. I mean, I think we need to think cross-functionally about this, and I think that anybody is welcome to weigh in on any of these topics.
Certainly. Dan Teutenberg?
Thank you for the opportunity, commissioners. This has been an interest of mine since it was announced many months ago that you were working on this with the mission and vision statement along with the strategic plan. So I'm excited to see a copy of it in my inbox so I can actually dissect it and look at it. I know a few of you have heard this before. With and for are two words that I use on a regular basis when I work with educating people. In the beginning, and still a little bit until later today when when Commissioner Rains was talking, I really felt that this was to us or for us. But when Vicki or Commissioner Rains was speaking, then I got reassured that this was the beginning of a stage, not something that is finite and it is adaptable. I would really look at the communication protocols you're using with this because it felt very exclusive. It felt as if a group was doing this to people and not with the leaders of people that will be implementing this. The other side of that is I would encourage us to meet together more on a regular basis as departments. It's challenging to do a strategic plan and implement the plan if we don't know what our other departments are actually doing on a regular basis, spending time together so that we know where we can overlap, write grants collaboratively, where our work crosses across our entire county. Being in Mason County on a regular basis, I see the benefits. We meet monthly as department heads together as one, and it allows us to cross connect on a very regular basis. So I would encourage you all to look at that as an option. But thank you for the opportunity. I see extension fitting into many of these areas. I just want to make sure that we have the opportunity to discuss what that looks like together before it goes into writing. So that comes with some good dialogue. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, if I could comment, please. Dan, if you remember last spring, I brought all the department heads together with Sam Kim in our room here and Kim Foster. I invited all the elected officials and other department heads to come. And my understanding from that point was that the county administrator was the commissioners had asked at that time, they weren't aware of the meeting. I explained that we could rotate it out, but this was not a public meeting. And so I'm assuming that the other commissioners will be taking a turn and get that implemented soon.
And Dan, thank you for that input. I would say that it wasn't the appropriate stage just yet. We had originally, several months into strategic planning, had a meeting over at Bove City Hall in Montesano. We were asked some staff to join us at that point in time. But for the most part, I think the bones of it needed to be decided by the commissioners. And then so nobody's late to the game. I guess I just wanted to reassure everybody, nobody's excluded. This was the stage where we really wanted to bring people in. And this is a living, working document, bring their input, their ideas, and help us mold and shape this into what it needs to be to really launch Grays Harbor forward. So thank you for that comment, though I agree communication is really important. And I'm not sure that piece was communicated really clearly to staff, is that we're working on this, but we're only laying the bones, and then the real flesh of it has to come from staff. It has to.
Dan, were you invited to that meeting over at City Hall? Because we had all of the department heads that we took a test to kind of find out what type of communicator we were, what type of, I don't want to say personality test, but like, I'm a firm get it done. I just want to get from A to B and then C and D. I don't worry about, I'm not a micromanager, if you will. Were you invited to that meeting?
Was not.
Okay. we'll take care of that to make sure that you're included going
No,
forward.
and I don't think it was anything was intentional, but I just want to make sure that moving forward, things are called out so that we don't miss opportunities because there's only a few of us in the county, and we really want to make sure that we're going to drive this home all together.
Absolutely. And I think inclusion is a big part of it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions online? I don't see any hands raised. I can,
Okay.
but so I have readers I need,
Okay.
but they don't quite work for there. Everything's slightly blurry. Sorry. Need a new prescription. Okay.
Maybe the commissioners also, do you want to come up here?
Yeah.
Maybe the commissioners can also, in the next 2-week timeframe, send out a notice to maybe after the 2-week response period is done, give it 2 weeks for all that information to be gathered and summarized in some fashion, and then have another one of these meetings so that 1, you'll be able to introduce a new commissioner, and 2, you'll continue that forward momentum.
And we have strategic planning for the commissioners is scheduled. No, we don't have it scheduled. We're supposed to have it scheduled. Yes, so that we can bring the new commissioner, whomever that is, into the fold as well. But Nikki Brown, Fair and Events Manager. Hi.
Hi. Well, I do know that strategic planning sessions had been scheduled and open to the public. So I don't know how many people noticed that it existed, but it has been open to the public when the commissioners have met for strategic planning. I'm not sure how many people showed up, but that has been an option. But my question is really just floating it out there. I guess you don't have to have an answer today, but when it comes to the 3 staff-related projects, how and when are we deciding which ones we're going to prioritize and move forward with?
That's a great question.
Right now, do you know how many we have documented? 0.
Mhm.
So it'll be a process over the next several months. And then a lot of it, like Thomas said, is going to depend on funding, depending on what those projects need. Are they direct or indirect projects? Those are the things that I would think of myself.
Okay, for me, I think it'll be helpful to have check-in timelines of this quarter, we're evaluating this amount of projects just to make sure that we can all get it in on time at the same time. And we know like what's being decided.
You might also have that list, and this is just my thought process is, as you go through this process, make those available or required like by July so that you can look at them and then prioritize. And if there's any that have to, have funding, they can be worked into the 2027 annual budget. I think that's going to be key because we don't like doing a budget amendments, do we, Rick? We want to know what we're going to spend.
Not so much.
Yeah. So I think just getting that timeline of knowing, okay, there may be some projects that might be adding an extra page or a link to the website that we'll do in-house. That might be something that's a quick priority, and then long-term priorities as well.
And maybe it's something simple like how to save on postage. It doesn't have to be some big, overwhelming plan that's super detailed, although it could be. That's great. And also, I would just like to say, I think the person besides the 3 of us, Sam, Wendy, and Thomas, that came most often would be Jerry Knack. So Jerry Knack from the Daily World did show up at several of our meetings, but you're right, it was open to the public. So thank you for that.
I think you're bringing up an interesting point, which is 2. What's the process? And then how do we handle it in buckets so that it's not one-offs all the time, so that we get the great ideas together. Now, like Commissioner said, there's got to be more than one, obviously. But then who's the group that's going to evaluate?
Mm-hmm.
And if that group was staff, was not commissioners, that would be really fun if we could find a way to get interested people that would volunteer to look in and evaluate that. I think that's the way I'd like to see it develop, so that it would be, it could be happening even outside of the commissioners. I think that's what you're looking for, really organic.
And maybe under the pillars, Rick, Because I think you're going to see some, they would fall under the pillars. And then departments that fall under those pillars. Granted, financial stewardship is how many departments?
All pillars.
All of them. So it's all departments, but there are some like with housing that might be a certain department or health and safety, those type of things. And then bring those ideas back and then you could rank them kind of like LTAC does and rank them in priority of how you're going to fund them
Yes.
overall. And I think it would be good, but the ideas would be great to have.
But it's interesting how many departments touch on certain things. Like when you talk about housing, well, roads is involved, building planning's involved. Public health could be involved. It's kind of moderate to low income housing or transitional housing or things of that nature. So what's that? Forestry. Yes, yes. So you can really see how the main pillars of the strategic plan really touch many departments at one time. So
I can see that department head meeting coming in handy for something like that. And then when we're talking about funding, especially with grant funding, to make sure we're all on the same page and not competing against the same thing.
I agree.
I do see value in that department head meeting monthly.
Thank you. I do too.
Thank you.
That'd be a great idea.
Anybody else brave enough to come on and ask a question? Come on, you've got questions.
Hannah has her hand raised.
Hi, Hannah. Hannah Cleverly, Emergency Management.
Hi, guys. I just want to reiterate kind of what Dan had mentioned about, I think this is a great jumping off point. I think there's a lot of discussions and as you guys have been saying that interact between all of our offices. While you look at increase in tourism, there's also increase in other areas that need to be communicated on. I think about a year and a half ago, we used to have a really good rhythm on managers meetings and discussions. And I think that could be a good platform to bring back to have some of these conversations on so that we're all in the same plan, or it's kind of talking on the same plan. Like I have good relationships with Suresh when they have new building planning going on. He has a forethought to think of emergency management as how that works when a disaster happens. But I think it'd be great as you're looking across the board and all the departments and all the managers to really get in person and have communications via us submitting input via a survey for 2 weeks. So that would be my recommendation from
Thank you.
Phone Hall here.
Thank you. I agree. Thank you.
I think Suresh should be governor. I really do. I mean, he'll call me when it's in my district. I'm sure he does the same for you guys, like with address updates and address changes. And I know he talks to Hannah about stuff like that. And then he's reaching out to 911. He's making sure everybody's taken care of. So I get it.
Good job.
So what we need to do is have that broader communication.
Did we clarify what those pillars are that you referenced?
Yeah,
I just wasn't sure if that connection was made between what the pillars are versus the way we documented them.
I don't think it was that way, but they are on the slide deck when you start getting to, let me see, where is it?
yeah.
Stewart.
Yeah, they're in the vision statements. Mhm.
But they're not identified as separate pillars anymore. I mean, originally the board had looked at them as 5 pillars, but then they morphed into the vision, the mission,
I think that they're still in the vision. I think that they're still outlined as housing, health and safety, criminal justice, economic development, financial stewardship. I think those are the pillars.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification.
You bet.
I had to get my readers on. I couldn't see it.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
All right. So moved. We are adjourned. Please give your feedback.
Thank you.